Oh, wow. I'm getting a hug, okay? Emotional.
Question. You ever see the ending of a show, hear the fact that it's getting a reboot, and silently dread what that can mean for your memory of the classic version? Well, this isn't that. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Void Theater. As always, I'm your host Alexander, and after so many years in development hell, the King of Rainy Street has finally returned to take his throne once again. I'm of course talking about King of the Hill 2025, a show that I admittedly had massive apprehensions about. But after sitting down and watching it, I'm pleased to say that this might honestly be one of the best revivals slash reboots ever. So like always, let's break it down. What's new, what's the same, and what's changed? And most importantly, what do I think of the show, and what would I rate it? And as always, if you enjoy the content, be sure to like and subscribe for more, because like the Master Propane Assistant Manager of Arlen, I have a lot of content planned. But without any further ado, we can begin. So let's raise the curtain, put this show on stage, and see if it's a clean burning show. Alright, so let's start at the very top of things and talk about the designs. And I don't really have any complaints. For what's basically a 10-year time skip, all the designs feel nice and accurate. The best way I can describe them is almost like fan designs for how the cast would age, and I mean that in the best way possible. The cast is all visibly aged, but the key notes of their original designs are there. Hank looks the same, his hair is just more grayed. Peggy has far more wrinkles in her face, but the glasses and her hairstyle have stayed basically the same, and even the characters who have gotten drastic makeovers still have these crucial details. Bobby, Connie, and Joseph may have jumped up in age, but put them next to their younger selves and it's clear how much attention was paid to making sure these characters look like the characters they are. And the same could be said for the voices too. Most of the original cast is back, sans the tragic loss of both Dale and John Redcorn's voice actors, but the rest of the cast have all returned and brought their A game. It's almost jarring how you can recognize each distinct voice and yet still notice the subtle changes they've added onto them to give them a more aged feel for the show. There is, however, the voice change for Khan, who's now played by comedian Ronnie Chang, and it's noticeable but not terrible. You can tell he was trying his hardest to recapture the original actor's tone and inflection, and I think he did a serviceable job. Overall, I don't really have any complaints here, aside from how jarring some of the voices can be in certain episodes, but other than that, I think everyone does the best that they can. But let's get into the real meat of the show and why you're all here. So, how's the humor? And honestly, it's damn near perfect. Normally for a reboot or revival, the hardest thing is nailing the vibe the original had. Some settle for less, some end up making it better, and some just recreate it with a modern twist. And that's where King of the Hill falls. And it's not a bad thing. King of the Hill works so well as a timeless classic because of its dry, flat humor. Hank was the straight man to a group of crazy people, and King of the Hill 2025? It does the exact same thing, and that's all you'll ever want it to be. If you want a crazy over-the-top comedy sitcom, there's so many choices out there that you could start to watch them all, and you'd be dead before you even got to the end of them. But for a show like this, with this type of dry humor, there's only really King of the Hill, at least in terms of animation. But that doesn't mean the show didn't bring in some new flavors for everyone to mess around with. One of my personal favorites is that Dale has gotten even crazier over the years. Whereas before you could have at least argued that maybe Dale wasn't completely out there, but in this series, no, he's gone. Bought into every single conspiracy possible, and even worse is that Joseph has taken up his same brand of crazy. Bill is still Bill and nearly ate himself into a food coma due to depression, and Boomhauer now has a stepson. Or even just the fact that Shane Wasana-san is now a larger part of the cast, basically taking over as Bobby's new combo of Buck and Khan, for better and for worse. Even Peggy had more than a few good lines, her harsh personality being toned down but now given a very in-character lack of caring about maintaining that teacherly aura she once had, letting out more than a few swears here and there that honestly had me laughing at how nonchalant she was about it. It's something that sounds out of character for her, but then you think back at how angry she was at times and realize that, yeah, she's at that age where Southern moms really tend to stop giving a crap. She's retired, she's hit the end of her road. Why would she still care about how people view her? My point being is that there's a bunch of new elements here that do bring some effort of modern craziness to the show. I won't say every Joker bit lands perfectly, but it really did make me realize what I enjoyed about the show. Those moments of dryness, the simple setup and punchline. It's a refreshing feeling that not a lot of adult animation focuses on, but that doesn't mean that everything about the humor or its new characters are perfect. Some of the new characters do genuinely fall a bit flat. Most notably, the newest neighbor addition of Brian Robertson, played by the legendary voice actor Keith David. He's not a bad character in so much that he's a rather flat one. There's not all that much to him, and he doesn't really appear all too often in the 10-episode season, which is honestly kind of a shame. Not just because of the lack of Keith David's voice, which is always a shame, but because what little we saw of Brian was actually really good. He didn't have that many lines or scenes, but what few he did paint him as an interesting character. He clearly was at the very least friends with the gang, and seems like he was actually sort of a second Hank to the group, albeit one with less patience for Bill and more leniency for Dale's craziness, and I honestly hope we get to see an episode or two focused on him in the next season. But before I get into my closing thoughts and final verdict, I do want to address the biggest change of this show, which I think for many fans could be a huge deciding factor on whether or not to watch it, and it's that this doesn't really feel like Hank's story anymore, which I know may sound weird considering the show always tried to give everyone ample time to shine, but here it's clear that the writers wanted the show to focus far more on Bobby and his life. Hank is still very much a focus for a lot of the episodes, but he's far more regulated to the B story than he used to be, and to be frank, making that change was a massive risk, arguably the biggest the series could have made, because making that shift could have easily driven people away from the series if the end results hadn't been that strong. So, were they? Well, actually yes. Bobby is in all honesty a great leading character with a good supporting cast. The newcomers like Emilio are fun enough in short bursts that we have with them, and Joseph is a fun combination of Dale and John Redcorn, fitting for the boy who was born to one yet raised by the other. In that same regard, Chang and Connie are also interesting, if a little underused. But what really makes Bobby stand out on his own is, ironically, that he's so much like his father. And you see that relation everywhere, in his mannerisms, to the way he talks and acts, but most importantly, in how he interacts with the world. See, one of the biggest hurdles that this show was going to have to overcome was the progression of time, and more specifically, how Hank would experience it. And while Hank does have his own experiences, Bobby also feels like a man out of time. He was raised by a very shy, conservative father figure, and it shows. He doesn't get the idea behind texting or how to process someone being in a non-committed relationship, or even one-night stands. In a way, he's grown into the role Hank filled as the man from a different time, even down to having his own version of the alley with the guys. Seeing him, Connie, and Joseph sitting in their living room or on their balcony felt like watching Hank relax after a long day. And the show feeds into that with flashbacks to the original series, showing just how far the characters have come since then. The years may have changed, but at the core, the characters are the same. Even Hank goes through a similar story. The first episode shows him constantly annoyed and confused at the way Arlen has changed, from new turning areas to new employees who care far less about how they represent the store they work at, and it gets to a point where Hank and Peggy lie in bed wondering if coming back to Arlen was even a good choice. Something that starts to weigh so heavily on his mind that he even considers moving back to Saudi Arabia just to recapture what he feels is his America. And I think the ending of that episode captures the team's feelings on how they want people to feel about the show's revival. Because the episode ends with Hank stopping at Megalomart and being asked if he wants to buy some Girl Scout cookies. After being beaten down by how much things have changed, he asked the girl if they still have Samoans. Which they do, but they're now called Caramel Delights so they don't offend anyone. And you can see it does anger Hank for a bit, but then he just smiles. He smiles and chuckles and talks about how nice the thought is. And the girl says the same thing, that it's nice being nice. Yes, something has changed, but the flavor and the feeling you got from enjoying it, it's all still there. And the final scene is a perfect show of that, because the first episode ends with Hank buying a new Wagner Char King, a grill he's talked about for years and is a perfect symbol of his work and his life in America. He tells the gang every single new bell and whistle it has and then tells them how he set it aside. If he's gonna cook on his own terms, and that's what's important. The world may change and evolve, and Hank can and will accept that, but it'll be on his terms in his own way. Alright, so with all that being said, if I had to rate King of the Hill 2025, what would I rate it? And being 100% honest, I think it's one of, if not the best modern reboots we've gotten this year. Which is honestly insane to say considering the sheer amount of amazing animated revivals we've had so far. While not everything about it is perfect, the fact remains that King of the Hill does something that I've often criticized other revivals for failing to do, and that's modernizing the show without sacrificing what made the show unique. This, the original characters now doing wacky things, this is the creators and writers actually sitting down and thinking about how the world's changed and where the cast fits into it. There are more than a few jabs at modern times and trends, but it doesn't feel forced or feel like it comes from a place of apathy. It feels natural and organic. The original King of the Hill ended almost 2 decades ago, and coming back meant that they had to tackle these ideas. But unlike say Clone High, where it almost felt ham-fisted, There's a genuine natural flow to this that just feels good. What little issue I have with certain voices for characters or not using the newer cast to their full potential is so outweighed by the positives that honestly, I didn't even feel like they were worth bringing up. Normally the max I would give for something like this would be a full rewatch, but this goes beyond that. This is just straight up a go get a Hulu subscription. If there's one animated adult sitcom that you have to see this year, I can't recommend King of the Hill 2025 enough. I finished it in a day and I'm already desperate to see what the second season brings. But with that, we come to the current call on this review of King of the Hill. I know it's been a long time since I made a video, but I couldn't be happier that this is the show I'm choosing to come back on. But as always, with the curtain closing, I'll leave you with some questions. Do you plan on watching the reboot? And if you've already seen it, what do you personally think of it? What could be improved, if anything? Leave a comment down below letting me know what you think, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe for more. But until next time, as always, I've been your host Alexander, and I hope to see you back in my theater.